Hi, I'm Rich Ribeiro. The Terrell Fund is committed to educating the public about the need to support New Jersey's infants and toddlers right from the start. That's why we're proud to support the important early childhood programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by the Terrell Fund, a foundation serving children. The Nicholson Foundation, changing systems, changing lives by advancing health and early childhood in New Jersey. The PNC Foundation, which supports early childhood education through Grow Up Great, a multi-year initiative to help prepare children from birth to age 5 for success in school and life. RWJ Barnabas Health. The New Jersey Education Association, the Northward Center, and by NJ Best. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey, and by New Jersey Family Magazine and NJFamily.com.
This is Right from the Start NJ. I'm Steve Adubato. We're joined by a group of experts, panelists. We've had 2 half hours. This is the third half hour. There's still much more to talk about. I want to remind folks that that website, Right from the Start NJ, is dedicated to parents, caregivers, people who care about infants and toddlers. I keep saying birth to 3, but in fact, it's prenatal care as well. Dr. Sprott, you wanted to jump in and talk about economics. I wasn't even sure what you meant by that, but I got to go there because you always have something important to say. What do you mean by economics of right from the start? What does it mean?
Well, you just asked about paid family leave. There's some countries,
in the last show, right?
That's right. Some countries like Norway, there's paid family leave for 5 years, either parent.
What does it mean, paid family leave?
That means that the government pays for the parent to be home to raise the child. And so that's the government saying that this is a priority to nurture the children when they're young.
Should we do that in New Jersey?
The question is, should we do it as a country, I think. You know, and when you talk about the money, if you think about public education, if you will, we artificially say that we're going to start to provide mandated funded education for kindergarten in most places up until the 12th grade. And we ignore the first 4 years. The federal government, as was said earlier, provides a great deal of money for Head Start, for earlier child education. The question is, why shouldn't they do it from birth?
Say someone says we don't have the money.
Well, the question is, there is the money. You know, that's part of the issue, and we can talk about redistribution of the money, but if you think about it, federal government pays for education, state government pays for education, and the municipal governments, for most large cities, half of the municipal budget goes towards property taxes to public education. The question is, why couldn't the government at the state, federal and municipal level say that we're going to start to divert money to this?
To paid family leave. How many
Not necessarily to paid family leave, but a portion of it could be for that, but to early childhood education. You know,
but where would it go? Be specific.
I'll just, before, you look at the tax cut, okay?
You mean the federal
tax cut that raised the corporate tax from 35 to 21. You said, what could corporations do? Do you know how much money is now available that they're giving away to bonuses and everything else? There's no reason why.
If they cared more about this, doctor, what would they do, those corporations?
They would provide early childhood care for their employees at no cost through some of this. The government could have done the same thing through tax credits, either for corporate tax credits or for individuals, earned income tax credits that could divert money towards this issue if someone decided it was a priority. And you know, we spend a lot of time talking about children being our most important product for the future, right. But we don't throw money at it. To
the doctor's point, sorry for interrupting, do you think the Trump administration and the Congress right now appear to have these issues in any way be a priority? Joe, do you see it?
I don't see it at all. I mean, we're talking, obviously, as the doctor said, more about tax cuts than about support for children and families. And
can you have both?
I don't think you can have both.
But if you are going to give a corporate tax cut all the way to 21%, the doctor said, well, how about, wait a minute, what about some of that going toward the children who need the help the most in terms of childcare? And, by the way, in terms of the paid family leave issue, is that an issue on the table in New Jersey right now as we speak?
So I think the doctor's right. I think the doctor brought up a good point. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And if corporations are getting those sorts of tax breaks that they can provide for the children and families under their employ, then you can go that route. Okay. But we're talking about a national problem in this year.
But Governor Murphy, say he wanted to do these things, but he also wants to do other things. Governor Murphy has talked about free community college. Governor Murphy has talked about fully funding public education based on the formula, the law. Governor Murphy has talked about a desire to raise taxes on the wealthiest in New Jersey to pay for some of these things and to deal with the public employee pension crisis, which would require more state dollars. How could he do all those things and still make a commitment to right from the start, NJ? How could he do that?
Well, I think
I don't mean to us per se, I mean to the issues that we're concerned about.
Sure, it's a question of will. It's not a question of money. This country does not have a problem with money.
And state?
No, this country, no, we don't have a problem with money. We have a problem with where we put our money and what priorities we've decided to use so far. This is a question of will. And I think it's a question of awareness. And the more that we become aware through initiatives like Right from the Start, the more the public will be able to speak to this. There was a national study done by the 0 to 3 organization just in the last November, December of 2017.
0 to 3 based in Washington. Go on our site, check on theirs. They're a great organization. Go ahead.
Yes, they asked parents, what do you know about brain development in infants?
Right.
And to their surprise, parents knew about the importance of brain development in infants. And they said one of the biggest priorities is quality, affordable, accessible childcare so that those brains could grow in the way that they knew. I think it was actually surprising that parents knew this. But parents know this, and so the public constituency knows this.
You think there's demand on the part of a significant number of citizens, Carrie, that their political leaders, that members of Congress, that members of the legislature, the governor, the president, that they take on some of these issues? You believe that?
Well, I think you just mentioned will. I think what we're here to talk about today is educating people so they make the right choices. And from Greater Newark Healthcare Coalition perspective, it's about health in all policies. So how do we consistently educate parents are one very important constituency, decision makers, professionals who are in the healthcare sector, the education sector. We want to have consistent understanding and messaging so that I would just posit this is more of a universal precaution approach, the way I see it, that something like hand washing, right? We now just know it, that it's good for everyone. And sure, it has more of an impact on some populations than others based on your risk factors, but we know it's good for everybody. So the things we're talking about in the series it's a similar way of approaching the issue. It's optimizing brain development and human functioning across the lifespan, and the strategies are good for everyone.
It's a very smart investment.
It's about valuing all children, because many families can afford to educate their children, to provide what they need. But many
including
families...
quality health care early on, as Dr. Sprott said. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But many families cannot. Working families, hardworking families, as well as families who are struggling to get into the workforce. They can't afford quality childcare. They can't afford quality health services. And when we as a nation don't support those services for families, then we are saying we value some children more than others.
And you know, just
yes.
to amplify this issue.
I'll come back to you, Beverly and Joanna. Go ahead.
You know, one of the things that the governor wants to do is
Governor Murphy
have a minimum wage of $15 an hour. And so if you think about, you know, the caregivers for the, you know, developmentally disabled or child caregivers, you know, agencies, if they don't get additional funding, won't be able to meet those payrolls. And so you're going to have the opposite of what you want to have happen is you might have agencies that go out of business. So there needs to be a fundamental grouping of individuals to say, what's the best way to approach this? In the days where, you know, we had charity care for health care, most of the insurance companies subsidized the care of charity care with those hospitals that didn't receive that money.
We should make it clear with charity, for those who I don't want to go into the whole thing, you leave the emergency room, there is a bill. The charity care is, or was?
Charity care is money that the state provided to help support hospitals that provided care to the indigent. What I'm saying is that the same thing possibly, because we talked about affluent people, or we talked about companies that might provide it. I think that they ought not just provide child care for their employees, but they could provide child care for others to help subsidize or offset the cost of individuals that can't afford it. We need to be creative, and government needs to be involved in the discussion.
As well as corporations, as well as nonprofits,
corporations.
as well as the media. Joanna, then I'll come back to Beverly. Go ahead.
Well, I think, to Bonnie's point and to Kaitlin's point, do parents want the best care for their children? Yes. Do they understand that they need quality care? Yes. But there's two components here. There's educating the parents about what quality looks like, and then there's accessibility, because, I happen to live in an area.
What do you mean accessibility?
Well, I live in an area where I might need to drive an extra 15 minutes out of the way to get my child to a place that's quality and, for me, fits within my budget. But if you take someone who's in a lower socioeconomic status and they have to take public transportation to get there and they have to cross town, that's a non-starter for them. So
That's assuming there's public transportation available.
You can get them there.
The lower half of the state, public transportation
Southern
is
part.
southern part of the state. There's very little public transportation. We have parents who, we had an employee who would ride her bicycle 2 miles to the bus stop, get on the bus with her bicycle, and then go to work, and then ride her bicycle from that stop to the job. We have parents who walk 2 miles with a stroller to get to
So accessibility.
something.
By the way, Jen Eichlin, say again what you said about the ACNJ study. Advocates for Children of New Jersey did focus groups, and they asked questions about the population. We're talking about finding childcare. Take a look at the words that came up: shocking, expensive, emotional, frustrating, eye-opening, difficult, hard, complicated, challenging, stressful, and much more. Terrible, terrible. So if, in fact, the new administration, here's the funny thing, we keep saying the new administration, the Murphy administration, the legislators in Trenton, it is a federal and a state responsibility, but the question is it going to come down to each state deciding, Beverly, this is what we want to do for our state, and we're not waiting for the federal government to come and do more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The federal government has given New Jersey a pot full of money, and New Jersey has to use that money to the best of their ability to make sure that they can serve as many families as possible. And so, of course, we have a new administration. I think it's time to look at what New Jersey is doing to see if there's opportunities to leverage other dollars, whether it's Head Start or some other dollars that might be coming into the state.
So, by the way, before we take this break, go back to the subsidy itself. Is it the child care subsidy? Is that what it's called? By the way, Jennifer, what is the child care subsidy before we go to this break? What is it and why does it matter?
It helps needy families who qualify by income to help pay for child care so that they can work or go to school.
And as we talked about in actually part one of this three-part series, in New Jersey, that child care subsidy is lower by a couple $100 than it is in New York, if I'm not mistaken. It's lower. And Pennsylvania. It needs to be raised? Is that what is being said?
Definitely.
Yes.
That's a definite. The question, well, we'll talk about where that money comes from. Priorities, this is right from the start. Continue to log on to our site, get more information. I promise we'll be right back for the final part of this three-part series right after this.
To watch more Caucus New Jersey, find us online and follow us on social media.
I want to thank you for continuing to watch, to be a part of, to be engaged by right from the start. NJ, I'm Steve Adubato. This is the last part, the final part of our discussion here, but I promise you, as you go on the website right from the start, NJ, you will see all of the interviews that we've done with members of the legislature, with policymakers, with folks here, but also Governor Phil Murphy in New Jersey will be part of this discussion as well. And we actually asked him when he was a candidate about some of these issues involving infants and toddlers. And I promise you, when we have him back as governor, we'll ask him again. Last part of the conversation. What have we missed, and what do we need to bring up in terms of solutions? Even if they're not guaranteed solutions, it improves the situation for infants and toddlers. Joe, what have we missed?
So one thing I did want to mention is that we talked about a child care subsidy, and there's one aspect
Increasing
of it.
the child care subsidy in New Jersey. Go ahead.
Increasing it. There's one aspect of it which is counterintuitive, so to speak. If you have a 2-year-old who you need child care for, and you have an infant who you'd like to stay at home with for a few weeks, and your husband is working and making $25,000, you may qualify economically for a child care subsidy, but both parents have to be actually working or in school to qualify. So you can't get the subsidy.
So, hold on, wait a minute.
Just to further complicate it. Yeah.
Therefore what?
You lose your child care.
You don't get child care for either child in that case.
Beverly, you're smiling because?
Well, because there are some new family-friendly policies. And so one of the family-friendly policies is at the time that you apply, you must be employed. However, if during the time that you're receiving subsidies,
right.
you're out of work for 3 months because of maternity leave, then you can have a period of time where you can continue your child care. It has to be reported, and child care can continue when you return to work.
And to that point, in terms of what's happening in the state now that the governor's coming into, there have been movements. Yes, Governor Murphy is coming into a quality rating improvement system in our child care system.
A quality rating improvement system. Break it down.
Yes, so other states have been doing this for years, and New Jersey has had our quality rating and improvement system for the past 2-3 years, which is essentially increasing quality in all of our programs. It's a voluntary program, though. It's not a mandate, and people have to sign on. And there's all sorts of reasons why somebody may or may not do that. But in doing so, they have technical assistance specialists that help them improve quality. They sign on to one of 4 curricula that have been approved as good curricula for the schools. And they receive specialized services and help for their teachers to go out and get further training.
So let me ask you this. In the few minutes we do have left, what about those watching? And actually, when I was telling some friends, we were doing this series right from the start, they said, oh, what a great idea. That's really nice that we're doing that. But when you press a little further and ask whose responsibility it is to care for, to give the best opportunities to infants and toddlers and provide prenatal care, there are some folks in their heart of hearts who are struggling financially, or that's the way they see their lives, and they say, that's not my responsibility. I've got too many things on my plate. So here's my long-winded question. To what degree do we really believe that most folks in society give a damn about the infants and toddlers and the parents of those who are really, truly struggling socioeconomically? I mean, really, they're poor. They're poor. To what degree do you think we really care, Carrie?
I think that's part of our job as advocates and why campaigns like Right from the Start are so important. It's about educating and making the case of why it's a shared responsibility.
Right now, is it not a high priority? I'm not trying to be negative, I'm asking. No. Does it appear to be a high priority? We watch a lot of cable television. I've participated in some of those spirited discussions about President Trump and other things going on in Washington. I never once have been asked a question. I've never once been part of a discussion, no disrespect to my friends and colleagues on commercial cable TV. I don't remember the last conversation about any of these issues anywhere in the so-called mainstream media. Did I miss it?
No, because we tend to be crisis-oriented. So we tend to...
This isn't a crisis?
It is a crisis. It's just not the type of crisis that's deep end where you're talking about the criminalization issues and other things. We're talking about setting children and families up for the best possible outcome.
Before things go wrong. Right. Is it a crisis, Kaitlin?
Absolutely. Because these are our youngest citizens. These are the people who will be running the world at some point. And if we don't take care of them now, we are all in trouble. We are sharing this space.
So Jennifer, describe what we need to do to get people more engaged and involved.
Go to this website right from the start, and hopefully, people will see it. I had a friend who saw the last segment they were on, and she is not at all in this field, and she was like, wow, I didn't realize how important brain development was and how early it started, and she realized how important that is. So let's get out there and let the rest of the population know about this important.
By the way, Doctor,
stuff.
I'll come back to you, Beverly. In the time we have left, I don't know if we can put that, don't put that slide up again, Jen, but Jen Eichlin, our executive producer, the brain development piece, if people miss part 1 and 2, I hate to call it the Reader's Digest, boy, does it make you old, right? The Reader's Digest version of it, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the importance is that the connections between the brain cells sort of develop from birth, actually before birth, but reach a critical mass between 2 and 3, and then these connections start to decrease. And if you don't get those connections established and reinforced, then you lose an opportunity that you can't recover from effectively with the rest of your life.
Jump in.
I think it's so much...
1 second, I come back to Joanna.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we say we have to elevate parent voices.
Elevate parent voices.
Elevate
go ahead.
parent. We have young parents out there with children. We have grandparents out there with grandchildren. They understand the importance of relationships between themselves and the babies. And because they understand that, and because they now know, if they didn't know before about brain development, help us to elevate this voice, elevate the noise, start talking to people.
You got me thinking here. See, it's one thing to talk about public policy, what the governor and the legislature needs to do, what President Trump and Congress needs to do, policymakers, what businesses need to do, all important, all part of our discussion. But I was just thinking, one of the interesting things that Laura Van Bloom, by the way, who's leads our communications team, I was going to mention to Laura, when I do these things on camera, it's to make sure people understand how important it is. I'm thinking, why wouldn't we take testimonials from parents, from grandparents, as to what they perceive from their experience to be the so-called best practice, and young parents like Joanna, older parents like me, who've made tons of mistakes, testimonials, video testimonials about our experiences, birth to 3, and prenatal care as well. Does that seem to make sense, Joanna?
It does, and I think I was going to say something to Beverly's point, which is I don't think enough parents understand the critical importance of care for their children in this age
You think
group.
they think it starts later?
Yes, preschool, certainly we understand. Everyone's looking for the best preschool, and we want good care for our babies, but maybe we don't understand the importance of the brain development during this time. So
And
it's
social
education.
development.
Right. So it's educating the parents because they need to be their own advocates. Because when you have a collective group of people demanding something, that's when you see change.
Okay, got 3.5 minutes left. What have we missed?
Well,
okay,
what I wanted to
go.
say about that
30
is-
seconds or less, go.
That is, it's big science, but it's simple solution, which is just be there with your child in relationship. You don't need a million toys, and you don't need to know a lot.
Future
But you do
of
need support to become that kind of parent. Not every parent was parented, and they need
Say that again?
Not every parent was parented.
Well, some of us were never mind. Well, go ahead.
I think there are a number of crises. You know, we asked if this is a crisis, and we said yes. But there
What
are
do you
others
think?
that are always in the news: opioid crises, et cetera. So many of the crises that we talk about, whether it's high school graduation rates, whether it's the criminal justice system, et cetera, can all be related to an investment or a non-investment in early childhood education.
So we call it that. We'll say there's a crisis in the criminal justice system. There's a crisis in terms of high school dropout rate. A crisis in terms of
military preparation.
People not being prepared to professionally succeed in life. It goes back to prenatal care to 3, so much of it, right?
Yes, this is the opportunity.
This is the window. Go
We're
ahead.
setting up,
foundation.
if we fail to get it right from the start, we're setting up inequality from the start.
Real quick, what do you mean inequality?
Inequality, this is an opportunity to prepare young children and their families to thrive in life and to reach their full potential.
Inequality, you make it sound like it's a moral or issue of justice.
It's on multiple levels. There's
Education,
health
equality.
inequality.
It is
because...
Go ahead, Joe. Okay, I want to come back.
It is because of the disadvantages that we've talked about, where an affluent family can support their child, a non-affluent family cannot. And if you do not provide that equity, that support system, that ladder to get that child up to an equal level, inequality will continue throughout.
And bad things happen because of that.
Absolutely, it's an absolute justice issue.
You know, you asked the question before is,
Minute and a half, go ahead,
do
Doctor.
people care? And one of the
Do
questions...
they care enough, really, is
Do
what
they
I'm
care
saying.
enough? And one of the questions that I've asked myself is that given the demographic shift, with over 51% of the kids being minorities, whether or not that's a factor in terms of the lack of revenue that's
What do
flowing
you
this
think?
way. I think it may be. I also think that over the past maybe 10 years or so, the wealth inequality, the shift of money from the middle class to the 10th of 1%, if those individuals were to say it's important, then I think there would be a change. Because I think, as was said before, there's enough money if the priorities were determined that this is important, that the will would make it happen.
So interesting. Minute left.
And you
Recommendations.
you need the political will to make the investment.
Need a political will. Jennifer, what do you want to share with the Right from the Start NJ audience right now? If you're giving advice to parents, one thing you can and need to do for infants and toddlers, go ahead.
When you're looking for childcare, you know, look to see what kind of education your caregivers have. Look at how many kids and how many adults are going to be in the classroom together. How often will your child move to the next classroom? Make sure they can stay with the same caregiver for, you know, for a good year, 2 years.
So listen, folks, I know that after 3 half hours, and Beverly, we'll keep talking, we'll do a one-on-one with you as well, everyone here. This is a campaign right from the start, NJ, that matters to all of us. Go on our site. We really appreciate you being with us for all 3 parts of the series. I promise you it will not end here. Thank you all very much.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by the Turl Fund, the Nicholson Foundation, the PNC Foundation, RWJ Barnabas Health, the New Jersey Education Association, the Northward Center, and by NJ Best, transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. Caucus New Jersey has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.
Education begins at birth. The brain develops most rapidly from birth to age 3, when critical skills are developed. Parents are the first and best teachers for their children, but for those like me who work, finding quality, affordable childcare can be challenging. But children have the greatest opportunities for success when they learn and have positive interactions with their caregivers. Because learning doesn't start in the classroom, it starts in the cradle.